All right, welcome back. We are getting there, right? We're on day 7 right now. So we've got a lot of stuff going and a lot of stuff moving forward. So first and foremost, don't forget, if you haven't already, plug in that hot glue gun. We're going to be needing that today. Other messages, if you need more fabric, if you're making one of those giganto lanterns, you know it's going to be like this big, you might need some more fabric. So if you want more fabric, the stuff is, it's good size and it is stretchy, but if you are making a lantern that's really, really big, you might need more. So the link is up above if you need more. Otherwise, you can come up with creative ways to cover it. Maybe only parts of your lantern are covered. So just think about that, keep that in mind if you went and made something bigger than the original plan, which was that the lantern would be somewhere around the size of your head, okay? Other notes, we are going to be watercolor painting, not today, but in the next few days, and the paintbrush that comes with the watercolors isn't necessarily the best. Does it work? Sure. But could you find something that works better? Probably. So check your home and see if you can find some nicer paintbrushes for when we're watercolor painting, okay? All right, so step number 1 today. You need to finish assembling the skeleton pieces of your lantern. So, all of them according to your blueprint. We need to finish making those first because we can't actually think about assembling it until all the pieces are made. So that's going to be the first thing. Now, if you're not sure how to do that, go back and watch the video from last class because that's going to show you how, and it's going to also talk about all of those pro tips down at the bottom too. But those need to be done first and foremost. Okay? The next thing then, of course, is we're going to decide how we want to cover our lantern with fabric. Are we going to be covering like each of these section pieces, like one at a time, and then when we assemble it, they'll all already have the fabric on it? Or are you thinking that you'll first put your lantern together, maybe something, like this, and then you'll wrap the fabric around the whole thing? Okay, so let me talk about what works better, like what kind of situations work better for each. If yours has a lot of angles, it tends to work better to wrap each piece individually first, because it's going to be kind of hard to get those angles with the fabric. As you can imagine, like with mine, this isn't assembled yet, but it all comes to a point at the top, right? So if I were to wrap fabric around this, it's going to be a lot more loose up here and a lot more tight down there. And it's just going to, it's going to be baggy on top and not enough fabric on the bottom. It's not going to work as well. However, if mine was something that was more squared, like wrapping it around this here, where that's like kind of squared, right? I can just wrap it around. Now I might need to cut it at an angle, and I'd probably have to do these pieces separate, the diamonds at the top and the bottom. But this, anything that's more squared, that's going to be work better for wrapping the whole thing one at a time versus each section individually. As you heard me say with mine, I'm going to have to do option number 1, where I'm doing it section by section. So that's what I'm going to be showing you guys in this video. It does take a little bit longer. It's a little bit more challenging of the 2 options, but because of the shape of my lantern, that's my only real option where it's going to turn out looking nice and not saggy and baggy in parts and overly stretched in other parts. So, all right, so here we go. Let me switch over our view so you guys can see my workspace. I've of course got my scissors ready. I would want to, before I start doing this, remember how this is our final project. We want it to be looking nice. So let's get all of those excess pieces kind of trimmed off here. We don't want that extra glue. If any of them seem a little weak, like I don't know if you can see that very well on the camera, but like this back side, it's glued really nice on the front, but the back side, well, maybe it still needs a little extra help and a little extra support. So we might want to give it that bit of extra glue back there, right? Let's check some of these other ones while we're at it. Cut that off. And for these inner ones, I mean, I could use my scissors. These scissors, I don't know if you can tell on camera, but they actually don't come all the way together at the end. So what I have been doing, see if we can get out my wire cutters here, hiding in the bag, of course. But the wire cutters really work well for getting in those in-between spaces. Let me show you how that works. So let's say if I'm getting this one right here. The wire cutters fit really nicely right in there. You might have to turn your the angles a little bit so that it's more ergonomic, but that'll get in there a lot nicer than my scissors will. Yours might be nicer scissors than mine, but alright, give a little extra support there. So once again, you just want to make sure each of these pieces, before we start wrapping them and getting ready to assemble, we want to make sure that they're nice and clean and looking as professional as possible. Alright, it's fabric time. So I want to be smart as I'm using my fabric. Like when I'm doing this, make sure that this is all dry enough. I wouldn't want to be, you know, starting like right in the middle here. That's, you know, I'm going to be wasting so much fabric. So always start at the edges. Try to make sure that you're being as smart as you can. Like how is this best going to work? Like for me, I think that is going to kind of be, it's going to be my best. Okay. So I am wrapping each section one at a time instead of assembling my whole skeleton of my lantern, like making the lantern go together before wrapping it. Once again, this is a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more complicated just because, you know, I'm going to have to wrap, how many in total? Do I have 11, 12, something like that? 11, right? Versus, you know, maybe only having to do like 2 wraps because I get to wrap around the whole thing. But, alright, so I want to wrap it so that it kind of comes around the edge. Now, please be careful. This is where we can burn fingers very easily. In fact, oopsies, I need some more space here. If you want to get something like, you know, your scissors or a pencil, let me just show you what I mean. Maybe this is another option, like the back of a paintbrush, but I can use that too to kind of push it up against it to help hold it so that I'm not burning my fingers. Now, my fingers have been burnt so many times throughout the year. I'm not really too worried about it for me. But once again, you guys find what works best for you. I'm going to just cut off some of this excess fabric just because it is getting a little bit in my way for this video. So I'm going to cut as close as I can. I don't want to waste. And I'll go back and trim up nicer edges later. But for now, I just want to make it so it's a little bit more clean cut for the video for you guys. Okay, so I want to, as I'm gluing this other side, notice how I'm kind of giving it a pull. I want to stretch it. So it says that in the video too. Now it can be loose. It's just gonna, you know, it might sag over time. So just be mindful of that, but I want to give it just a little bit of a taut pull. That glue all the way down here. Okay. Now as I'm doing this, I'm going to give it a little bit of a tug, pull it tight. Once again, I'm getting a little bit on my fingers, but it's not, I don't know, I honestly don't even feel it. So you can be a little more careful with yours if you want. Now this doesn't look great right now, right? That's not pretty, but once this dries, I can go back and cut that. I'm not too worried about it. So then I would do the same here. Give a little bit of, actually I'll do this side first since that side's still drying a little bit. And as you can imagine, this side here, you know, I'll cut it to make sure it looks really nice. Give that a stretch and pull. Smaller edges are a little bit easier, as you can see. Oh, what was I saying? Oh, this will be the inside. Like, I'm going to cut this and trim it so that it looks really nice once all the glue is dried and cooled off. So, you know, I would go back and I'd cut all of this to make those edges look nicer yet. But this is going to be the outside of it, you know, so once we cut off all of that, it's going to look nice and sharp, especially once we start putting it all together, right? You're not going to see all of those edges that we see here if we're wrapping it around a little bit, around those sides. Okay, let's get that last side here. And once again, I'm going to stretch and pull it like that to hold it down. And then once I'm done doing this, you know, you can move on to the next one. But once I'm done with this and it's nice and cooled off, that's when I would go in and just really trim off any of that excess stuff, because, you know, we don't want it looking sloppy. We want it to look as nice as possible. So I'd go in and just trim all of that. Okay? So that is going to be our goal. We want to cover all of them like this if you're doing it that way. However, if you're doing it the other way, which is a little bit easier, as you can imagine, if you're only having to pull it around once or twice or something like that, you'll have to instead connect and glue all of these pieces first, whatever shape you're making. And that's just like we've been doing in class. So, you know, we did all those practice ones. I know you guys know how to do that, where we assemble it all. But then once yours is all assembled, you know, put on some extra glue, especially on the inner sides of it, to make sure it's really nice and strong. But then you would stretch your fabric around the whole thing and then glue it together where the ends meet. So once again, we want to stretch it nice and tight just so that it's not going to be sagging on us once it all is assembled. So, all right, have fun. I can't wait to see how these are turning out. Remember, we're going to need to get our supplies ready for watercolor painting as well, so have those ready to go for next time. See ya.